A good joint sends you off to a flying start, puts you way out ahead of the rest of the crowd all day, gives you energy to keep you going. Joints. Grab a basket and nip along to the grocers.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of Operation Grow Show. Hope everybody's doing well. I realized I just ballsed up the intro music. I wasn't sharing it. I was listening to it. So, oh, crap, I got a second. I wasn't going to restart it, man. So, yeah, I hope everybody's doing well. Yeah, it's hopefully going to be a great show. So, on that note, hey, how's everybody doing? Raptor, so how you doing, buddy? How are things going with you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for the intro, Pete. I'm Raptor Grow. You can find me at Raptor Grow Instagram and various other podcasts besides the Operation Grow Show. Sometimes I appear on the Grow Room 420 forum on their Friday lives with Pete. So we have some fun there, just some laughs. We get into some serious conversations, and then it goes into just like normal conversation. So it's really fun there. And you can also find me on Mondays, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern, and 1 a.m. UK time. Apologies to all my UK friends.
Actually, it's at 12.
Is it
It's
12?
at midnight.
Okay.
It's midnight.
An hour
yeah.
off.
It's an
That's not
hour
so
earlier.
bad. Okay.
Makes all the
Yay!
difference.
Maybe I'm used to like what it was before, so I just didn't account for that. But in any case,
it's back to the daylight savings. So it's back to normal. Yeah.
I'll have to adjust myself, but I am getting used to the different points in time that all my friends and all the people that I interact with in chat are in. So yeah, it's great to get to know you all. Hope you can all join us for the Neighborhood Grow Show at that time. We have a lot of fun. We'll actually be having a beginner grow series. So much like you did,
cool.
Pete, I really liked how you did it all. You started from the beginning and then you grew out from there. You met people where they were, often wisely tells other people, meet people where you're at. And yeah, I took your example and GMF's advice, and hey, we're just going to start beginning. We're all seasoned growers to an extent. Some of us are newer. So yeah, it's a lot of fun there. Hope you all can join us. We're going to be focusing on tent growing specifically, just because of the way the nature of what we're growing is. And it's super helpful to have one of those around if you happen to garden other things as well, because you can get a great head start on your spring vegetables. So yeah, enough of me. Thanks so much for having me again. How's it going, Jima?
Oh, excellent. And thanks for having me, Pete. Thanks for making this platform for us to all get some education. So I just happy to be here, man. Good to see you, Raptor. And yeah, I'm Genetic Memory Farms. Holler at me on Instagram if I can be helpful to anyone. So, and I'm also hanging out in Neighborhood Grows. Come and see me there. So yeah, it's good to see y'all, man. Always look forward to this time every week. This is my happy time.
Good stuff. Yeah, no. It's definitely warming up, I must say. That's something I'm noticing. Like the greenhouse outside on that front, that's definitely getting there. The chilies all starting like, ooh. Let's get growing a bit quicker. I've got more from the ones of all the fruit that fell off from last year, like starting to pop up. I'm like, that always feels so guilty, killing these bloody things. It's like, oh, there's just gonna be too many. I can't have all of you here. I have to. Oh well. It's that thing like like with doing like the breeding project. You get like, oh, I don't want to throw stuff away all of a sudden. Like the potential that could be in there. That's how
Well, if
you
you
get
have
people to change their mind on the death penalty, man. You say, right, I tell you what, start a plant breeding project. And remember, any one of them could be the magic.
yeah, that's a good opportunity for the people that can share genetics. You might want to use that time to be like, hey, if you need something extra, do a trade, something, you help that person out now, they help you out later, or maybe they helped you out before, and you're just like, hey, I remember what you did and I appreciate it. There you go. And just like Pete was saying, you don't know what that's going to bring up later. So give it to someone who you know that they're going to keep it around. Just tell them, hey, keep this around for me. Keep an eye on it. Let me know if you see something special. And then you could always come back and get it later. So yeah, there's different methods of doing this. Sharing is caring. We're all a community here. So let's do what we can together to make this a little more manageable. Look at what the breeders do. They implement testers. They don't grow everything out themselves. They might initially start everything, but they use their community in all of this.
Yeah. Oh, and look at that. We've got someone else joining us.
We got a lefty.
But now you're mentioning that, hey, Lefty. You there, buddy? Oh, trying to connect audio. Audio connecting. Oh, he's muted. All right, we'll get back to you. You there,
Jump
buddy?
in anytime,
Hey,
Lefty. You're good if you still need to set up. No worries.
But so you mentioned that you guys are doing a growing on your show. You're starting from, hey, there he is. You're starting from the beginning again, and for a beginner's bit.
Yeah.
What are you looking to cover in the first episode? Because what we're looking to cover on the show today, which is going to be about
very similar
environment on the environmental side of things, and taking a look at that, because that does become important. It's both for the beginner, well, for all aspects of growing, but when we're looking at it in terms of breeding, it's understanding that this environment is what led to what you got to see, what the outcome was. It was a combination of the genetics that you used in this environment, and it's therefore understanding what's going on in your environment and different ways of looking at it to be able to replicate that and make it easier to replicate that and visualize what's happening. But at the same time, as a normal grower, it's super important. And as a beginner grower, I would say it's one of those where it's simple. It's the most basic thing to do. I mean, it really is. And it's the one thing you see people kind of oddly scrimping on or not getting interested in and going, oh, well, I just do whatever. I mean, hats off to you if that's how you want to do it. But
yeah, we'll actually be dipping into environment is one that I feel we'll bring up, but we'll have to focus on a whole show just for that, just much like we're doing today. We'll touch up on it and make sure that we have exactly what they need. We will be focusing on the equipment itself in the beginning, just basically telling, if you don't have the equipment, you can't really reach what you need to do. I started growing and I had everything but an exhaust fan. Guess what happened my first grow? Botrytis. Guess what happened the second one? Halfway through my second, I got botrytis. So guess what I got? The proper equipment, and that is super important. I even got one that would overclock the CFM, so the inside of my tent, I'm sure, would look pretty crazy from my plant's point of view. It's just getting sucked in, like if you're trying to show off at the beach or something. GMF.
I was just gonna say, and keep in mind, we're starting at a beginner level too. So, Pete, don't be surprised if you see yourself referenced as and if you want to go more in depth, here's your man.
Yeah. But that's the whole thing is what, the thing about environment monitoring really is that it is simple. You can start with, I'm just going to look at two, and all we're going to look at really is just two things, temperature and relative humidity. That's the only two things we're actually going to look at. And then okay, how much information can you derive or get out of just those 2 points? Yeah. And Lefty, I don't know, you ducked off there, buddy. How you doing?
Yeah, how's it going? Please do your intros. Yeah. We were trying to cover for you to let you cover, do whatever you needed to do. But yeah. Interrupt us at any time, man. Just that's one of the things we wanted to focus on as well. Temperature and humidity, just like you're saying, super simple, but critical. Critical. If you have these, if you were able to plot it out on, I don't know, some kind of environmental control system that monitors all that, you would see on a plot chart exactly what your issues are when you'll see the spikes and the valleys, the hills and the valleys, and what those represent are crucial. And ideally, you really want as close to the middle as possible, and then when it warms up, just a slight warm up, and then cool down like that. So
I tell you what,
yeah,
man, I'm yet to see. I've seen one environment kind of do that.
yeah, in
But
ideal situations.
I've yet to see somebody actually control it to that degree. I mean, you've got to be running a closed room and then running a closed room properly. And one of the advantages with remote monitoring solutions, for instance, is you can run a closed room a little bit more closed because you don't have to keep popping in to see what's going on inside. You've got everything monitored and dialed in properly. So yeah.
Yeah, that's basically what we're covering. Just the basic bare bones things to first off get through the presentation / podcast in a reasonable amount of time, but also like we together want to cover as much possible in that time, so that when we move on, we can always refer back to that. Is like, hey, when we see a beginner in the chat, we'll be like, okay, please check that out, and you might learn a lot. You might hear some repeated things that you're hearing now, and we can always not only can we refer back to it, we could just follow along in a nice schedule with like, okay, we covered that, now let's cover security, let's cover specific environmental controls, let's cover nutrient inputs, whatever those might be. And the decisions, what's the crux in the decision. I chose dry amendments. Some people do liquid inputs. There's a lot of things to discuss. So yeah, again, bare bones.
And I think it's important
so that we can
at that bare bones level, if you're starting out from the beginning, is get it drilled into your head that environment is the key thing to keep an eye on. You've got everything else, but keep that dialed in, keep that optimal, and then you worry about everything else. And everything else is so much easier if the plant isn't being stressed by this environment. Everything else becomes like oddly, amplified in strange ways, depending on which direction the environment is off by. So something that would be fairly quick and easy to solve with it dialed in, something way more difficult when it's completely out of whack. The plant just isn't reacting the way it's supposed to.
Just as simple as you're saying.
I was gonna say, I know it seems like a weird analogy, but I teach people to cook, I teach people to brew, I teach people to make, sauerkraut, all that kind of stuff. And the one thing it all has in common is it's all energetically favorable reactions. It wants to happen, right? The plant wants to grow. So whenever I'm teaching a newbie, my biggest thing is just hammer down, like Pete said, on those few points that you really need to nail. The temperatures, the times, the things that matter to microbes. And as long as you can nail those things through someone's head, everything else kind of nature does.
Yeah, I mean, I guarantee if you can keep that plant well lit in 25 degrees Celsius environment, sorry, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, and 65 to 70% humidity, don't go above 70% humidity, it would grow healthily. Okay, now you go then just worry about what you're feeding it, but in terms of that's it, now you've got this optimal growing environment in terms of ambient environment for the plant, which is what's all being exposed and grabbing all the energy and doing all the transpiration to allow all the food uptake to happen through the roots, etc. I mean, we're in lots of degrees of simplification, but it's just to keep it nice and simple on that front. But now that we can actually see you there, Lefty, how you doing, buddy? We'll dive into the presentation in a bit.
I'm doing good, man. Busy as usual. Starting to harvest my breeding project plants. So those are all coming down. Seeds look really good. So those will dry out, and I'll start the sorting process, and trying to decide. I think I'm gonna wait around before I run them, just because it's gonna be a pheno hunt, and that's just gonna be it. So for the summer, I think I'm gonna do something else, and then come back to the next round. But yeah, everything's good here, man. Yeah, looking forward to getting my new internet in. I got high-speed cable coming in here soon. We had to pay an arm and a leg to get it in here, but they got full contracts. So I'll be happy to get my miner unit back up, man. It's been 2 runs without it, and it kind of sucks not being able to monitor that after you've had that tool. It kind of sucks.
Yeah,
not to
it's
have it,
like
you know?
yeah, I always feel like you're growing blind all of a sudden. Like, oh, I don't know what's going on. Yeah, it's
Yeah, you
it's
walk
odd
in here,
how
like,
it
oh
creeps in.
shit. Yeah, where'd this come from? But yeah, everything's good, man. Greenhouse, I should be the last hoops are going up today and tomorrow. Get the cover on it. About ready to
Mhm.
spend an arm and a leg on some soil, and yeah. Yeah, it just keeps going out the
Excellent.
window, man.
Cool, man. Good, good, good. Sounds good. Sounds good. And the perfect timing is he's got a mouthful of food. Ah, sir, how's the meal?
That's better than catching them in mid bong rip.
Well, one's got more of a choking hazard potential than the other, but hey, hey, hey.
Yeah. At least he can talk and cough at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh, I decided
Howdy,
on a
howdy.
name.
How we
Right.
doing today?
Good, 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 good. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm better than I was yesterday, which was better than the day before. So I'm on the rebound here.
That's good. That's good.
It's obviously lunchtime on the West Coast. Me and Raptor are both stuffing our faces. But yeah,
Yeah,
man,
yeah.
thanks for having me again. Glad to be here. Did I miss the
No.
talk already?
No. We're going to get into it. This is a bit more of a. It's like the slides are a bit more of a read at times. So actually, I need to catch up with you on the other ones so we can put them all up on the Patreon site. Like this one's already, I've already uploaded this one, so to all the patrons who are there, you've got access to these slides. This is probably a little bit more of a chunkier. No, it doesn't chunkier just because I don't know. Summarizing certain things down to bullet points. It's like I won't necessarily read them, but you know, it just you can read them in your own time. The content's there. So yeah, actually, on that note, let's see. How do this. Problem is sharing it as a background it cuts off bits, so we're not going to do that. This is where I amateur hour it immensely. Yeah, grow room environment. You know, monitoring your environment, keeping an eye on it, what's going on, etc., etc. Is really important. And I want to do this as a part of a series. This first one is just about covering some of the initial. Well, we'll have a look at the agenda actually. We're just going to look at two factors, 2 points of data. Well, 2 things that you monitor: temperature and relative humidity. Think about data capture. A little thing about what is humidity, because that actually is. It's useful to do it. I have a little bit more of an understanding of it. It can help you better understand how you want to control it, which is certainly useful. And then just taking a little bit of a high-level look at some of the interesting things you can do with the data. So, what are some of the derivative bits? You've got these 2 data items. You've just got temperature. You've just got humidity. Well, okay. Well, what else can we do with these 2? What else can we derive from these 2 data points? Just some really basic analytics, just to talk about some rolling averages and cumulative difference, just what they are and how it can help you understand what's going on. And then getting into visualizing the data, which is where it gets, I think, we're so used to seeing these time series charts. Okay, great. But there are more interesting ways of visualizing it and looking at it. And this is just covering, we're talking about time series charts. Like, no, it's just I can line on the fucking chart. But other ways of looking, like scatter charts, 3D scatter charts, a violin chart, and there's some stuff I've done with heat maps and VPD charts, and I'll show some interactive stuff as well. And then on the next couple of ones on the series, I want to cover like how does temperature, how does it get created in the environment? So it's more like how does it get created? How can you control it? What creates humidity in the environment, and how can you control the humidity in the environment? So this one's really just to get a better high-level overview. Easiest two factors to monitor is ambient temperature. I've put root zone temperature, so just temperature really is an easy one to monitor, and ambient relative humidity. And the thing with this is you can go and buy $5 or 10, whatever, probably $10, $15 humidity temperature probe sensor and place that in your environment. It is important to understand where you place it. Recommendation is place it at canopy height. Just that you're measuring something that's inside the canopy. That's where most of the environment exists that you're interested in. There's a very thin layer at the top and around the edges, which might be close to what the ambient environment is, but the stuff in the middle is very different to the stuff above it. Who cares what the environment's like a foot above your grow. And also understand that sensors only measure a specific point in space. It doesn't measure something across the room. Okay, an infrared sensor gun thing, yes, measures across the room, but it's measuring a point on the other side of the room. It doesn't measure here and on the other side. So if you want to get a really good understanding of your environment, you have to have multiple sensors positioned around your environment so you can understand how it's changing and how it's different from place to place. So you can data capture. So there's two ways of doing it. It's the old, manual way, notepad and pen. The catch with manual data capture is it's relatively few data points that you are going to capture. You're not going to walk around to 100 sensors and go to 100 and write down the information from 100 of them. You might, go to 3 or 4. And there's relatively low frequency. You're not doing it every 10 minutes or every 15 minutes, or you might do it twice a day, 3 times a day at a push. You're certainly not doing it at like 30-second intervals. So you need to be really disciplined when you're taking down manual data, writing it down, keeping a log of it, keep it going. And it can be quite difficult to correlate the data at the end. And by correlate, it's like starting to analyze it and look through it, because you don't really have enough of it. That becomes the problem. So you got to make a few more assumptions in the data at that point. Then you've got over on the automated side of things, there are lots of solutions on the market. One example would be the Miner from PL Grow Systems. Hey, why not? Highly recommend it. But there are others. There's a wide variety of them. I would say whatever you look for, ideally you want to be able to, it must offer some kind of charting facility. You're going to fall into 2 categories, ones that are remote, so they're Wi-Fi or Bluetooth enabled. If you're security conscious, avoid the Bluetooth stuff. And the Wi-Fi enabled ones, the advantage with them is you'll get a lot more. You'll get all the analytics and the charts and data, and you often get the power of what's more than on your phone, and you got access to quite a bit more. But at the same time, anything that logs data, if it's just local, you want to be able to get the data off the damn thing. The Wi-Fi ones tend to all have data, or access to the data, visualization of it. If it's just a local one, I'm trying to think, something like the push, I think that just writes out to a CSV file. So long as you can get it off, fantastic. Makes it, nice and easy. High frequency, multiple data points, a lot of effort to capture it. You switch it on, walk away. But they bring with themselves, they bring the challenge of, a lot of data. And there's nothing worse than just having a great big stack of the stuff. So, okay, great, I've got a lot of data. What do I do with it? So you do need to be able to make sense of it. And that's where different types of visualization of the data start to help you do that. And you get, really gets into it. You get into the whole machine learning side of stuff. The only way you're doing that is through automated data capture. You're not capturing enough data points manually to feed a machine learning algorithm, unfortunately. Hang on a second. So just a quick sort of thing on some environmental basics, just a quick dive into, and it really is just a very high level dive at humidity. So it is a bit reedy. But essentially, the two that are probably the most common that you'll run into will be the reference to absolute humidity and relative humidity. And then the one that we use is relative humidity. But those two are the ones that are definitely the most frequently commonly used one. The advantage about understanding absolute humidity is you can work out how much water you need to evaporate into the air to bring it up to the relative humidity that you want to achieve, and how much water volume-wise you actually need to extract from the air. I mean, essentially what it comes down to is that, let's say a cubic meter of air can, at 25 degrees Celsius, can hold, for simple sake, 100 grams of water. So if I evaporate 100 grams of water into it, that's saturation point, it holds 100 grams of water. If I reduce the temperature to 24 degrees, it can only hold 90 grams of water, because the volume that it consumes as it gets cooler contracts, it gets smaller. So the volume of air that this thing occupies gets smaller, and so how much moisture it can hold reduces. So this is why, relative humidity outside when it's cold and wet and rainy in the middle of winter at 99% relative humidity, you come inside and the tanks to, as soon as it goes from -5 to 25 degrees Celsius inside, it's 2% humidity. It's because, outside it's not holding any moisture. The air's really dry, even though it's 99% humidity. If that makes sense. So absolute humidity is actually talking about how much water is in the air, the actual physical amount of water that's in the air. And you'll see that on more in calculations for big greenhouses, when they're actually trying to work out how much moisture do they need to fog into the air to raise the humidity, and the cubic meterage of the place, you can do the calculation. So it's much more controlled on that way. It's not just firing off and hoping that it'll eventually get there. So again, this is just going into a bit more. As I said, these slides will be available on the Patreon page. I'll leave them up for a little bit so people can actually. Again, you can always just pause it if you're watching it on YouTube. And there is the relationship between relative humidity and temperature, and that's quite important to remember. As the temperature drops, it can hold less moisture. As the temperature rises, it can hold more. So when air is circulating around inside your environment, as warm air comes down into the cooler area, if it's really humid and you're blowing it downwards or sucking it down, you're going to run the risk of it all condensing out as it comes out the bottom. Or if you're bringing in cold air from outside, as it comes in and hits this warm air and it drops the temperature of the warm air, you'll suddenly get condensation forming on everything. Right, yeah, so the data that you get from that you can capture, what can you do with it? There's two different types of data sets that you're going to get. Essentially, there's the raw data, in this case, temperature and relative humidity. And then you get the derivative data, and that's data where you've taken these two other bits and bring them together and run them through a couple of calculations, and it spits out another value. So you wind up with something like vapor pressure deficit, VPD, which is taking ambient temperature and relative humidity as an input, and dew point is another one. And dew point is a really important one to follow. Why dew point is important to follow is this is what could lead to mold forming and really ups the chances of you running into certain pests, powdery mildews, pests and molds, etc., forming in the environment. So the dew point temperature is the temperature at which you've reached with the current absolute humidity, the temperature at which you need to drop to for the air to be saturated. So if the relative humidity is 70 degrees and the temperature is 27 and it drops to 20 degrees Celsius, 20 degrees Celsius is probably below the dew point temperature. So that is beyond 100% humidity. And so all that extra moisture just condenses out of the air. And it's 110%, so the extra 10% that was there, and it'll land on all the leaves. And bear in mind, a healthy plant that's transpiring, leaf temperature is roughly 2 degrees Celsius below ambient. So what you want to do is you always want to keep your ambient air temperature at least 4 degrees Celsius or more away from dew point, so that even the cool leaves reduce the chance of condensation forming on these cool leaves. So that can really help in managing, or if you're running into a problem with mold and that forming.
Hey Pete, we had a question in chat a little while ago. Do you know how barometric pressure plays into VPD or any of these other? Do you know how that plays alongside the rest of this?
Yeah. I mean, it does come into it on certain other, because the vapor pressure and vapor pressure deficit, depending on the context in which you're using it, there are other factors that you can start to throw in. For the simple vapor pressure deficit for which the formula exists, there's no barometric pressure is not taken into account. It is one way you can do, and you've got other ones where you can take leaf temperature into account. Look, if you want to do leaf VPD, you have to measure the temperature of every individual leaf. They're all different. It's not a way of doing it. We looked into how the likes of Argus and the big greenhouse guys doing it, and the research they did, and they tried to make sensors that were shaped like leaves and behaved like leaves and all this crap, and eventually they just said, no, put sensors near the leaves, close in the environment. You're getting as good enough of what the rough temperature is. It's good enough to make the assessment on. It's not this is not a high resolution science here. This is to get trends and ideas and understanding of what you're doing. It's not, oh, at this particular one leaf point. It's like, no, VPD in general in the space isn't that. And then with the derivative, you get into things like being able to do, for instance, forecasts, which take combination of ambient temperature, relative humidity, meteorological data, and then machine learning algorithms, and they combine all of that together. And you can also take in light cycles and can then start to predict where the environment will be X number of days into the future. And with that information, are able to then predict if you're at high risk of powdery mildew, various other things breaking out, or whether you're on track for your yield is going to roughly be this, or will be that, based on how things are progressing. And so some useful analytics, one of them being cumulative difference. And what this is to understand, how does your environment like drift? So the chart that you're seeing here is 48 hours, and it starts with a reading at the beginning of the chart at midnight. That's the first reading, and it compares the next reading to that one and calculates the difference, and then it adds that, and as it goes along, it adds that difference up. So you can see how it drifts up and down away from zero. So at some point it was almost 40% more humid than when it started off. So that's from the starting position, how much it's drifted up or down from that starting position. And it's this over time. So you can see, did it at the end of 48 hours, the one called Monitor almost ended roughly where it started off. It's drifted a bit, it's kind of up a little bit, but the one called Vedrum is definitely drifted down. I mean, you can see it's clearly, drifted down. So it's a really handy one to understand, how things have moved from this point in time to now. How much has the environment drifted or moved around? It's really helpful to understand when you've put things in to try and control it. You should see it drift back and stay nice and stable. Rolling average. So it's taking, this is like a 6-hour window. This is again the same. And in fact, that's it with just the raw data. Actually, it's not quite raw. It's got, I think it's like, hang on, resample to 15 minutes, I think, on this one. And then this is where it's done with a 6-hour rolling average. And you can see the shape's completely different. You lose all the fine-grained details. So this is taking a 6-hour window of data and moving along and taking the average for the last 6 hours and calculating it as it moves along. So what you always find is the first, whatever the rolling average is, start of the chart is the actual data, because it needs to have accumulated that much before it can start to give you the rolling average. Again, really useful when you're looking at long periods of data. You don't want to look at data at 30-second intervals. When you're looking at like a year or 2 years worth of data, you just said like, yeah, just give it to me as a, you know, hourly rolling average. I just want to see how things were looking. You're looking more at trends over time, particularly useful as one of the ones to look at. So yeah, then the cool bit is like the visualization side of it. What can you do with it to look at it? So you've got your standard time series charts. Like these ones are from Peel Grow System setup. And here you've readings plotted along over time. You get to see what's going on. And here, for instance, VPD is also calculated and dew point is calculated, so you can actually see what the dew point was and you understand what's going on. Then you get into, and this is a linear chart, so it's actually going along a line. It follows a linear pattern, linear trend. Just to understand that this is where things start to separate, is when you get into something like a scatter plot, which is a non-linear plot. But what allows you to see is a linear relationship. So as an example, there is a linear relationship between, on this chart down the bottom right, you can see there's a linear relationship between VPD and ambient relative humidity. And as ambient humidity goes down, VPD goes down as well. And as RH goes up, VPD comes down. Sorry, wrong way around. Doing this too long. And the opposite. So you can see there's that relationship. Ones where they all stay horizontal, there's no linear relationship because one's moving and the other one's staying exactly where it is. So you can see which ones, oh, okay, if I tweak this, it's definitely going to impact that. I'm going to see an impact there. But these also allow you to understand and figure out, well, hang on, there's like a weird outlier down the bottom here. Like, what was that for? So you can spot potential issues in the data. Ideally, you want everything clustered together. You don't want things way apart. That shows that there's quite big swings. And if it goes from a cluster over in one corner to a cluster in the other corner and nothing in between, that means it just jumps from one area to the other and it keeps just jumping. If it does, you want it to be like a oval or oblong between the two. 3D scatter plots is where it gets a little bit more interesting, and this just allows you to look at data. So like when we're looking at VPD, given that that is a derivative of temperature and humidity, well, you can plot them together. So you can plot your temperature, humidity, and the VPD and show it as a representation and understand. Then you can, again, it's just another way of looking at it. And I'll show it. These are interactive. You can scroll around them and look at them from different angles, and you can get to see how the data is clustered. So it's a little bit more interesting, I think, than if I can VPD chart, you know. This is really understanding how the environment has behaved over a period of time. You know, where has it spent most of the time? These ones, violin charts, they go by another name too. And I've got certain friends where they do these charts, they use a very specific color palette. And they do it on purpose. Again, these are great. This is another one where they've got 3 set up in a grow environment, actually down in a line. And what's really interesting here is you can see how they go from front to middle to back, is that it actually drifts. You can see how the data is moving, but here you showing a distribution of the plots where these points were falling. So how many for the one in the back and the relative humidity, a lot of it is above 80%. And then there's a swing and it goes to 70%. So you can see by the shape of the violin, again, how it's moving, drifting it around. And this is just comparing the fact that, for instance, this is the Peel Grow Systems where you've got a temperature probe and an ambient temperature probe. And this is just putting the two together and showing from that same sensor the temperature readings from the 2 different ones plotted up next to each other. You can see how much of a difference you've got between them. So yeah. And then heat maps is where you can do things like this with plotting out your VPD, as we were talking about earlier, like see where you are. Quite a handy one. Again, I'll show an interactive version of it. It's pretty cool. So yeah, and that brings us to the end. I was going to say questions, but yeah, contact details if you do want to get a hold of hold me in terms of Peel Grow system side of it. It's sales@peelgrow. Ooh, shit. Systems. It does not spell correctly. Let me correct that. Yes. At Peelgrow Systems on Instagram and peelgrow.systems. And if you go there, go to the store, use the coupon code OG Show, you'll get 10% off, and it's free postage. So, yeah. And on that one, yeah, on to some questions. Any questions? I know it's a bit and yeah, sorry, it's kind of data dump.
Yeah, my question is, why do you think it's okay to use violins to solve problems, Pete?
Because violin solves all the problems. It's worked
I'm
for
sorry for
centuries,
that.
buddy.
I'll show myself out.
We had a couple from chat, but I kind of fielded some of them as they came up. There's some interesting comments about negative pressure on a tent, how that would affect VPD.
To be honest, I don't think I mean, at the point where you're generating that much negative pressure that it would actually impact it, your tent just sucked itself in. I mean, it's going to be a lot of, you've got to be shifting quite substantially in altitude to make a difference. And if you could seal your tent up at sea level, or if you sealed your tent up at Colorado and made it airtight and took it down to the beach, the thing would just crunch in on itself. It's immense amounts of pressure. So yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's just about like the VPD is a whole deep topic. I mean, we do scratch at it. The most important thing about it is it's understanding, am I giving it a comfortable environment? That's what it's really they're trying to do. You're just trying to not give it a stressful environment. You just look at it like that. It's okay, I've got these two, I've got temperature and I've got humidity. Great. Okay, well, I can take those and make them one number. Rather than you having to look at two numbers, I can just make it one number for you. Yeah. And the trick with it is to understand, actually, speaking of VPD, another one to share. So yeah, you can see, what's this one here at VPD 20 with, okay, so there would be 2 on another scale. So this is measured in hectopascals. So temperature of 27 degrees, relative humidity 43. Now already what you want to do there is go, okay, if I can't affect the temperature, what do I want to do? I want to bring it down. So I'm just going to raise the humidity, but you got to raise the humidity up all the way to, around 70% humidity. So you got to look at it as, what can I control? Can I control the temperature? No. Can I control the humidity? Yeah. Okay, I'll bring it in. But you got to also be careful. Look, you can have a VPD of 10 or 1, a relative humidity of 21, and temperature of 10 degrees Celsius. It's not really going to have optimal plant growth. So it's more about, but 25 degrees Celsius is the optimal. And then what is the humidity range for 25 degrees Celsius to keep it in that comfort zone? And the comfort zone goes out quite far, it's all the way out to 39 degrees Celsius, but it gets really tight. That band is, you can't stepping either side at this point becomes quite a disaster. So yeah, you'd want to keep it around 25, and 70%, 60 to 70% humidity is kind of ideal. 70%, 60 when you that stage of flowering. and you can keep it like that the whole time, day and night. The other one I wanted to show, oh yeah, those 3D charts. So you can look at it and rotate it around and look at it. So you can see most of them are all up in this area over here. And it's really narrow, so there's not much temperature fluctuation. The humidity goes from 70 to 30, but it's a really narrow one. So you can see very little temperature fluctuation. Some oddities around there. And it'll look different if I do it for a whole week. That's quite a bit of data. I mean, at least it's still. You can see certainly see there's some odd ones that fall out. Like, where the hell? What happened here? Yeah, something was going on. And you might okay. That might explain why I saw something. There's another weird one right at the top here. Temperature, what? 24 and 19. Yeah, so these are just really cold. So that could suddenly lead to condensation forming. There was like some cold thing happening. That might be why you got mold suddenly happening. So you would go and look for these data points all of a sudden on the time series, as an example. So yeah, I'm a bit.
That's probably the coolest VPD chart I've seen. Is that one you had there with the gradients on it? That was pretty cool.
But yeah, that's it. It's just to try and make it easier to read. The problem with that one, unfortunately, right now is on a mobile phone. Not so much. It's more look at it on a iPad and bigger.
So Magma just raised a decent question. I'm gonna kind of tweak it a little bit. What's so for an environmental sensor, regardless of the brand, but considering that they're a decent sensor, what's the average like cubic volume that a sensor would reliably measure? Like how far would you need to be? Where's the next sensor go, because they're equally distant, and then they've got the boundary between them to make sure you're covering your grow?
Yeah, that comes down to airflow. So the better your airflow, the fewer you could have, because you could have a more consistent one. So you need to put in, you start off with one, and how far away can I measure for, okay, it dips off, but I need to know why it's dipping off. And so if I can't move enough air around, well, I need to. But when they get too far apart, saying, okay, the bit in the middle might be a bit odd now. So you've got the size of the fans you're starting to use, because you don't quite know where to control it from. It's all down to the resolution that you're actually after. 1 and a 2x2 is probably great, because you can drop one of the temperature probes right on the floor and one sitting in the canopy. So you've got that temperature profile to look at. Again, you can keep an eye on the floor temperature and go, oh, that dropped really cold, and you just go and have a look behind the pots, make sure everything's being cleaned properly for mold that suddenly appears because it was condensing at the bottom of around the pots.
Do you think that same 1 up, 1 down setup would work for like a 4x4? Like where would you expect it to break down? An 8x8, a 10x10, a 12x12? Just spitballing.
Well, what's interesting, what you can do with the 4x4 is you could infer, if you could put both temperatures in like the canopy, for example, because that's really, you're kind of the bit that you're interested in. So because this is the thing, absolute humidity in the environment is the same, relative humidity will alter based on temperature. So we've got a temperature, something over there that's measuring the relative humidity over there and the temperature over there. So from that, I can say, well, if I'm in the same space and the temperature is this, what's the relative humidity over there? Based on the space has to be the same environment, and I can recalculate relative humidity by knowing what the temperature is of some, I've got a reference point. So you could then have estimated relative humidity and therefore calculate and then do like diagonally across from each other, and just move them.
So we seem to have a general question in chat. But Magma surmises it. How much of an area can you cover with a unit? And then like what I know that you can also have multiple probes on one unit, so that there is that variable as well.
Well, each unit, like something like the Minder unit or whichever one, again, like as we were saying, the thing about a sensor is it monitors this point in space. Nothing. I don't have one lying around here. That's it. That's what it does.
Right.
So, yeah, that's it. This is why I say airflow is important. Like, you need at least two of them to understand, okay, when I blow the air from here, is it making it to there? Yes, it is. No, it isn't. And is it making a difference? You can have one and, measured over here, wait 10 minutes, walk over there, measured over there, you can just move it around. So it's like, okay, you can do it with one. You're just going to be moving it every 15 minutes to a new location, which becomes, that's manual data capture. It becomes really annoying. So what you want to do is put 2 or 3 or 4 in that are capturing it all the time at these points, and then you can really understand how it drifts from one to the other. You'll see this area on your greenhouse. I mean, you kind of know it, but at this time of day is way warmer than it is on that side down over there. So I need to maybe consider blowing air in the morning, fans, and I can tell it when to stop because it's gotten warm enough on the other side of the greenhouse now, and you can turn these things off. It's done. And you can understand where so if you've got a OptiClimate or any one of these environment control systems, understand they have one sensor in them and they control based on that reading. So wherever that is, it's whatever that fucking thing says on the thing. On the other side of your room, it's completely different. You have to move them around.
And especially,
just to answer his question there, it does send out alerts for over temperature or under humidity settings. So you can tell it this is my min-max temperature and min-max humidity, and it'll alert you if those are breached. What I will say with any of those things where it does that is never set them to like these are alerts if shit's gone wrong, not if if the maximum is your room's running at 29 degrees, don't tell it to alert you at 30 because you're just going to get dang, 30, 30. Tell you at 35, I need to know something's, or 37, I need to know something's up.
So the consensus then is that the amount of sensors you need to measure a given space is directly correlational to the homogeny of the air within that space. So the more you're able to whip that air through that space to keep that air consistent from one side of your whatever grow box, greenhouse, grow tent, bedroom, bathroom to the other side, the more homogeneous that air is, the less sensors you theoretically would need. The more variable that space is, the more sensors you would need. So it's directly relational to the amount of airflow and the homogeny that you're able to build in the system.
So that's kind of where like proper HVAC really makes a big difference, because those guys know what they're doing. So wall fans are great for really small spaces, but I mean like really fucking small spaces, because if you stood more than like 6 feet away from one of them, you go, is that thing on? Unless it's like a really big wall fan, that I can't feel that. And so it doesn't blow air very far, and what it does do, it just congregates in the middle. Usually they're all stuck up around the side, and so all this moist air just dumps itself into the middle. So yeah, get proper airflow, air control. That's really, really important. And looking into, there's a difference between office HVAC and grow room HVAC. Office HVAC, people don't want to feel the breeze on the back of their neck while this thing is circulating the air, but it's got to keep it at this optimal temperature. And so the way it does that is very different. For plants, they want, if you can have 2 meters per second airflow over the surface of your plants, you're going to have really happy plants, and you're going to have reduced chances of, again, pests falling on it, because the airflow is quite quick. Nothing can land and get a grip really easily. Spores don't land on it. So you need a different style of HVAC for agriculture as opposed to office. So just think about that when you're buying some of these air diffuser attachments and things that you see being advertised. They may be great for an office environment, but they're not really designed for what you're trying to do.
Well,
And
that's
might
what
not
I
have the
like
desired
about
impact.
your what you're offering too, because of the multiple sensors that can be applied here. You can clearly see where the issues lie. And at what points. When did the fan turn on? Okay, well, it just so happens whenever it turned on or off, we started seeing a lot of the issues. So that saves you time and just overall headaches. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to mine and seeing where I need to make my improvements, because I just use airflow coming in. Like right now, my window is just open. I'm letting in natural airflow. The plants love it because I live in a more favorable growing area. It's fine. Like that's fine for me, but that doesn't work for everyone else, and you really have to clock it down. I'm looking forward to.
We're all really quiet and we leave, Lefty won't know. Classroom.
Halftime.
Talk about, man. No, sorry, I'm reading something.
Okay. Yeah, reading something in the back of my eyelids.
I'm completely
Reading
jealous
this
about
very interesting botany text.
about how relaxed Lefty looks right now. I want to get on that level when this is all over. He's just kicked back, joint in his
That
hand.
lefty hash.
Hey, you know what?
Grab the killer.
My wife left for a week this morning to go visit her parents. Dude, I'm home all alone. She took the dogs and everything.
Yeah.
Do not turn on a black light.
I'm surprised we could see you. There should be enough smoke to be covering like the camera.
I'm working on it.
It's just the first one, man.
I'm awake. I'm sorry. I'm listening, but I'm reading some at the same time. So
Yeah. Millions would believe you.
Yeah.
So like
looking
the whole
forward
thing,
to it.
I would say, it's start with the most basic. Take notes. Just write stuff down whenever you can. Get a temperature of a hygrometer. I do recommend that you do actually splash out the money and buy a data logger. Just because it takes a lot more data points for you and allows you to produce some much more interesting visualizations. 4 days is great, but it's nothing when you can get. It doesn't really tell you what's going on. And oddly enough, if you go in at the same time every day, chances are it's going to be the same. It's what happens when you close the door. That's what you're a little bit more interested in. And you don't have to keep going in and out on the wireless ones. As I said, the bonus for them is you can look at it from outside. You don't have to go into the actual environment. So you reduce another vector for pests and pathogens for making their way into your environment, because you're going in less often. So it's another handy one. But I reckon you should be, look to spend, of course I'm going to say it, but you look to spend between $100 and $200, 100 plus pounds, 100 to 150 pounds, I would say. You're definitely getting into that price point. You should be able to pick up something pretty damn decent. Look for something that allows you to get the sensors into the canopy. Bear in mind that yes, little design features that we realized. Mylar tents block Wi-Fi signals, so they can be a little bit problematic. Try and look for one where you can put like the actual, maybe the bit that does the Wi-Fi piece, like on the Minder unit, it's the body of it. That can be kept outside, and the sensors are on 2 leads, so you can run them into the tent and do it that way, for instance, depending on the size of the tent. But or just have a Wi-Fi booster nearby so it can punch through the Mylar.
People should be switching from tinfoil hats to Mylar.
Yeah,
Just to block out all this crazy signal.
all together. Yeah.
And I was like, I could just need to coat my house in Mylar somehow now.
What's in the Better Call Saul?
I'll
His
just
brother.
live in a grow tent. Boom.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, any further questions from in chat? From chat. Tell you what, 3G, no, not on 3G, it's Wi-Fi. But I've seen plenty of people we got customers in that who do use a 3G Wi-Fi dongle, so that allows you to connect. It's a 3G dongle that has a Wi-Fi runs into Wi-Fi access point, or a 4G dongle that runs as a Wi-Fi access point as well. Because we've got people using them in their allotments gardens over here. No, that's looking good there, GMF.
So if anyone's curious, so I run a CanFan Max, the 6-inch. So it can go a minimum of 200 CFM. I think it'll clock all the way up to 330 something, 333 CFM, and I run it on a 3x3. So my setup is I have your Minder unit sitting there. I have your soil monitoring unit down there. And then for the interior of it, I run a standing tower fan, just circulating on the interior. Then I seal it up, and the only air intake is a 6-inch from down here. So it ensures that my air intake is always going from bottom to top. So it's weird, as you seal it, you can see them start to dance as they move more and as they finally get kind of sucked into the tornado. I don't know if you can see that now. They're actually starting to move around some. So that's typically my setup, and it's really super humid time of year right now. So having the airflow kind of maxed out really helps out.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pete.
And making sure that it's going upwards is also really useful. Again, it stops things from settling on leaves, so it can help with prevent mold in that forming. And in the high humidity environments, that's very important. So yeah, we're going to take a look at the next episode of this, and the series will be how heat is created in the environment, how to control it, how humidity is created in the environment, how to control it. I look at something like a headlight. What's it doing in terms of heating? LED light. What's it doing in terms of heating? How that's different. I do have some model just to show how air moves around an environment, because these are basic fluid simulation models, and what happens when you put things in the way, because again that changes it. Great, no plants in here, everything's fantastic, plants grow. Okay, hang on a second, there's things in the way now. Your fan barely moves air 2 feet all of a sudden, or a foot, because there's a great big plant in the way, and that's why the one at the back is rotten to hell and gone. But yeah, so yeah, on that note, I think we'll draw it to an end. We will do the little hangout. We can do that for a little while. I do actually have something else, but that is good. So on that note, yeah, Raptor, how you doing, buddy? Where can everybody find you?
I'm doing great. That was a very informative show. Got to have a chance to be more familiar with the unit that I'll be using myself in my flower tent. one of my flower tents.
Nice, nice,
yeah.
nice.
Yeah, had a great show. Thank you so much for all the information again. I'm After Grow. You can find me at on Instagram at Raptor Grow, all one word, lowercase. You can find me here, Operation Grow, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and 9 o'clock UK. Yeah, you can also find me at the Neighborhood Grow Show, which will be airing this Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 Eastern, and 12 UK. So trying to update it. Yeah. We'll have a lot of fun. We're going to be doing a beginner grow tent series, just like I mentioned before. Hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Cascadian. How about yourself, sir?
Thanks for having me, Pete. That was a great one. If you're looking for me, I am found here every Saturday at 1 or 2 p.m., depending on Pete's weird time zones.
Weird.
And otherwise, look for me on Instagram at Cascadian Grown. And just keep it simple,
cool.
yeah. That's where to find me.
Excellent, excellent. And Lefty, who's not sleeping, reading the back of his eyelids. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are they saying? One sheep, two sheep.
Find me at Lefty's Farm on Instagram and Lefty's Farm on Cannabis, and I'm always here at Operation Go.
Yes, you are, sir. Yes, you are.
Also known as Lefty's Nap Time.
Yeah, Lefty's Nap Time. Hash time. Sleepy time with Lefty. So my favorite thing about this.
Lefty's Hatch Dreams.
Dude, you should totally have that as a show just to help people sleep, Lefty. You get stoned and fall asleep, and they fall asleep too.
Yeah, fall asleep with Hash Lefty. It sounds good.
I love it.
We can do it.
Love it.
At GMF, buddy, where can everybody find you, sir?
Usually just being a jerk somewhere. No, hanging out here with you guys on Operation Grow or in the neighborhood. Especially, I'll see y'all there hopefully Monday. Or hit me on Instagram if I can be helpful to anyone. Genetic Memory Farms on Instagram. I'm always, fermenting foods, fermenting beverages, fermenting weed, you name it. So if I can be helpful to anyone, give me a holler.
Excellent. Yeah, actually, I just see Mick mentioned something about seeing it installed makes a difference. Like I just realized, but this is just like what you can measure. We'll get into a bit more like the Minder unit maybe in detail. I'm trying to not push the product too much, but yeah, go and buy one. You want it.
I'm cheap and skeptical, and I thought it was a good idea. So if that tells anybody anything, there you go.
Daddy got a boat to pay for. Buy one. Hookers and blow don't pay for themselves, man.
Mother's Day's coming up. Minder unit.
Yeah, every Mother's Day needs a Minder unit. So on that note, you can catch me.
Buy one for your mother plant.
Yeah, exactly. You can catch me at Peel Grow Systems on Instagram, and also at Operation Grow 2019 on Instagram. Or peelgrow.systems as the website. And on that note, thanks everybody. We'll catch you all again next week.